everybody, today I've got a very interesting video for you because I decided to rent a cabin in the mountains to paint, and I created a lot of paintings there, so let's head right into it. Before we could check in at the cabin, we went to a lake that was nearby, and this is what that looked like. We came at a good time, it seemed, because they were doing this kind of water show, and I'm sure this looks so much more interesting at night. And it was such a lovely place. It was in See, if you know that. And I took a bunch of pictures there that I can use as references later on. And then we started to run from the rain, and this was our cabin in the mountains. There was no rain at that point, but the entire weekend it felt like we were running from the rain. Here you can see the views from the cabin, and then I already started the first painting and I unpacked some new gouache. I rebought the Winsor & Newton gouache set. This is a pretty good introductory set, and I keep on recommending this to people if they ask me what kind of gouache to buy. So I might as well rebuy it myself. And I unpacked all of the brushes that I had with me. I had two of those little things. I don't know what this kind of pencil case kind of thing is called for brushes, but when I came home, some of the brushes, the tips were a little bit bent, so I don't know, I should have put caps on them, I suppose. And I brought out my Moleskine watercolor sketchbook, and of course I had a paper clip so that it would somewhat stay flat. And I started with a rough sketch at first. Here you can see me sitting in the cabin. They had this little bench and table. It was absolutely tiny. The entire cabin was super small. It just had a bed, this little table and bench combination, and that was pretty much it. And from this cabin we had the best view though. So once you opened the front door, this is what it looked like. You're gonna see it as well later, what it looked like in real life and not just my painting. And I decided to paint the little porch that it had outside. I ditched the chair and the chairs and the table that were on the porch though, because that would have taken too much time to paint, honestly. But I took the time to paint the kind of wooden parts, like the roof that you can see here, and also the little balcony kind of thing with all of the little wood panels on there. And I also decided to paint the little curtain, and the curtain was see-through, and I feel like this comes across in the painting. This is probably what I'm most proud of in this painting. And I also added some yellow flowers because there were so many, and you're gonna see them here and there in this video because there were so many of these flowers and I just loved it so much. And again, I'm so happy with how I did the curtain. This is such a random thing to be proud of, to be honest, but making something somewhat see-through but not too sheer, painting it like that is not that easy. So I'm glad that I kind of managed to do that. And I also brought in a lot of purple tones because I didn't want the wood to just be brown and bland. I really love doing that. Instead of brown tones, I often use purple, and as well for shadow parts, I use purple, and I just love doing that. Purple is a lovely color, and I think it makes it look a little bit more dynamic, even if it's not realistic. Who cares? I like it that way, so I do it that way. And yeah, I added in the mountains in the background, and the trees, and I thought that this was a lovely start for all of the paintings over the weekend to kind of kick it off and paint the view from the cabin. And I did the whole page spread, so this was only the first little painting on here. This is what the finished result looked like, and this is the view that I had. Like I said, I ditched the chairs and the table, but everything else is on there. And overall, it was just amazing scenery, and it was so lovely and so peaceful there.
Also genau nichts da. Na. Und hier ist so weit.
Little shit. And this was the pathway there, more mountains and water. I really loved this tiny little stream that was there, and the cows and all of the peas. And I feel like I blended right in. Thank God we were pretty much alone out there, honestly. One of the best things of the entire trip was a stable that was nearby that had baby kittens and baby geese. Can you believe how cute these are? I personally have never seen tiny kittens like that, and Mama Cat was also such a good girl. She was so beautiful and so lovely, and her kittens were amazing. Those were the tiniest kittens I've ever held in my arms. They were so cute.
Don't think you like it. You're coming home with me.
And then I decided I want to take a bath in this bathtub because, I mean, we're here. This is an amazing view. And it was a lot of fun. Of course, I couldn't stay serious because when have you ever seen me being serious? Unfortunately, the water turned cold after a while. That was not that romantic, but the view was amazing. The next day, I decided to paint one of the lovely yellow flowers because they were everywhere and they inspired me. So I decided that would be the next motif for my first sketchbook page spread. So I did these two paintings on the right side, and then later on I added a plein air painting on the left. So you're gonna see a lot of landscapes coming up. That was the only painting that I did that was not a landscape technically. So I wanted to do something a little bit more simple by painting these flowers, and I kind of made them a little bit more detailed than initially planned, but it was one of the quicker sketches, let's say it like that. I used the watercolor pencils that I had packed for the trip, and I used them. Yeah, I used them and then I used them. What am I talking about? I put some details on this painting with those colored pencils, and usually I would prefer to use softer colored pencils on top of gouache, but that was what I had with me, so I used it for that. And I added in a little bit more details. I added in just some yellow dots to indicate some more flowers in the background, and I painted a little bit of grass at the bottom of this, and I think that it looks pretty cute. I'm very happy with how this sketchbook page turned out, and here's how it looked at this point. I also added in a few swatches at the top. Then I decided to go on a waterfall trail to take reference pictures to paint later on, and overall get a lot of inspirations for paintings, and it was really inspiring. I really loved the water, and it was such an experience to see. I mean, I've seen waterfalls like this before, but it's been a while now, and there's this lovely trail that you can go up there, these stairs, and it was just so cool. And I got so many photos and things that inspired me. Also, the plants that grew there were super inspiring. And look at those colors of the water and all of the shadows and textures. And I just loved it. And I could have stayed there for an entire day, honestly. And here I was taking the picture that I decided to paint. So this picture, I started to paint it in the cabin, and then when we went home, I finished it. So I started it off camera, but you see that I just mapped out the basic things in there, and then I finished it off when I was at home, and I decided to put it in here like that in chronological order so you can see the painting finished and not, I mean, it's not chronological order technically. Like, I wanted every painting to be finished within the video so you can really see how it looked in the end. And I added in gouache as well, so I combined the watercolor pencils with the gouache. I added in the greenery on the right side, and I wish I would have added a little bit more greenery, but it just wasn't there in real life, so I wasn't sure about adding it. I wasn't sure if it would look good or if it would look weird, but I'm still glad with how I painted the rocks, because honestly, rocks are not my strong suit, are really, really hard to paint if you ask me, and I think I did a somewhat good job here. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out, even though it's probably my least favorite motif of them all, but here's the finished piece. Once we reached the end of the waterfall trail, we were at a lake, and I decided that that was the perfect spot to do some plein air painting. So I'm now finally in this beautiful scenery where I can sit down and paint with watercolors on scene. And some of you might have heard me say before that I don't like plein air sketching or painting because it's just so hard to do. But quite honestly, I've noticed that I've grown so much and I feel so much more confident now, and also in my ability to not have to completely copy the scenery that I see. Because a few years ago, I really tried to recreate what I saw as best as I could because I thought that I had to. But now I kind of let go of that, and I just create a painting that's inspired by the scenery with my own interpretation of it. I add my own colors. Like I said, I love to add purple for shadows. I add in lots of colors. I add in things that might not be there, or I leave things out. This was just such a lovely spot to sit at least while the weather was nice. Like I already said, we kept on running from the rain during this weekend, but this was just such an amazing moment. And also, can we talk about how beautiful all of the footage here is? I'm so happy with this, to have this footage, even though I look a little bit weird with my hat. Honestly, I look like a tourist because I have this big sun hat and my glasses, but I mean, I kind of was a tourist in a way. So you can see I added in the clouds with some gouache, and that was pretty much the end of the session here because it started raining yet again. And so we decided to go back to the cabin because that was just not it. And back at the cabin, the sun was shining. It was lovely. So we successfully ran from the rain, and I continued my painting there, decided to finish it, and that's what it looked like then. And this is what the entire page spread looked like. I'm so happy with this. And I decided to also paint another view from the cabin that was on the other side. And one of the reasons or the main reason why I wanted to rent this cabin was because it had these amazing views all around. So I didn't even have to go that far to have beautiful things to paint and get inspired by. I loved those trips that we did where we went somewhere else that was nearby, like with the waterfalls, and later on we also went on an alpine or mountainous road. But I also really loved to just stay at the cabin, especially when it was raining, because I had a roof over top. And so, yeah, I mean, it's easier to paint if it's not raining. I don't know if I have to explain this, especially with watercolors or gouache. Painting in the rain, I do not recommend that. Like, my painting from before, it went a little bit, it bled a little bit when it started raining, but it wasn't too bad, so I'm sure you barely noticed that. You can see I used the watercolor pencils some more here, and I really wanted to use them some more because they're so versatile, so you're gonna see me use them more. Here's what I painted. On the last day of the trip, I decided that I wanted to drive up a mountainous road. It was so scary going up this road, and there were a lot of bikers and people that were insane, just driving way too quickly, and I felt really scared, but I'm glad that I went because I decided to create 2 paintings there. So my strategy for this was to use the watercolor pencils to create a sketch as good as I could, and then go back home and blend the sketches there. So this is the first sketch that I did, and then when I was at home, you can see here, I blended everything together because that takes a lot of time. You have to let it dry in between, and then you go layer by layer, and I just wanted to do 2 more sketches there so I can have 2 more paintings for this video. And I'm glad that I did it like that because I got to see the reference in real life, basically, and I got to sit there and sketch, but I also could just calm down at home and finish the pieces, so I didn't have as much pressure. So I highly recommend trying that out, especially with watercolor pencils. This works really well because you can do it like that, just sketch, blend, and then add on some more details. So here's the second location where I did the second sketch, and I decided to paint this, like this road. I don't know why. It was probably the least interesting part of everything we did on this road trip. Like, it was not really a road trip, but we went up that road. And I decided to kind of paint the other way around, like paint the road and all of that. But I'm so glad I did because that was so much more interesting to me than painting yet another mountain. So I only have the mountains here in the background, and in the foreground I have something going on. I have the trees, I have the street and the car and everything, and I'm glad I picked that because on my painting it looks kind of interesting and kind of fun, even though in real life it didn't look as interesting as the mountains, but I painted enough mountains already, so here's that. I did that, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, honestly, and I'm glad that I allowed myself to paint the scenery that most people would probably consider less interesting, instead of going with what people would be impressed by, but I'm not personally that interested in. I'm glad that I went with my intuition and my instinct and listened to my gut here and just didn't care about anything else. So here's the finished page spread. I'm so happy with this. After I had finished up the sketches so I could paint them back at home, we decided to go up to the top of this mountain, like the top where you can drive to. And again, it was very scary, but it was worth it because we had this amazing view, and now I have even more reference pictures to paint, so you will see so many of the sceneries that I filmed and took pictures of. You're gonna see so many of those again when I decide to paint them in the future. So these are all of the pages that I did for this video, and I'm so proud. I did this in one weekend, y'all. It wasn't even 3 days. Yeah, I'm so proud, honestly. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did so, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and let me know if you'd like to see more of those kinds of videos. And I hope I can see you again next time. Goodbye!